Okay, I'm going to do a video here. I hope my screen doesn't freeze. I have a lot of windows open, but I just wanted to pop on here real quick. Here's a current event for you. The headline reads, Arson Threats a Major Issue in Wildfire Ravaged Los Angeles County. So the last few days, this huge fire's been happening. And to cut to the chase, no one's sure where these fires came from, but there is increasing concern that it was started by one or more acts of arson. Now, we're going to get to a larger theme here. We're going to zoom out to a general principle, but first let's cover what's going on here. This post says the Palisades fire started as a very small fire in a backyard, then ran up a ridge, was caught by wind, and created an ember cast that caused fire throughout Palisades. And I think that was... I'm not sure. I don't know my Los Angeles geography. This is a recent post, but I think further down here. Oh, okay. It was another fire. Yeah, so that's the recent one. And what this article says is back in 2021, a similar situation happened. And that one was, in fact, started by an arsonist. So right now there are several fires raging. It's big. A lot of homes have been destroyed. And to add insult to injury, hundreds of homes in this area had their homeowners insurance dropped about a year ago. Now, this is something that I've talked about extensively, about insurers dropping homes from coverage. And in many cases, there is no alternative, and so people just don't insure their home, which you can do if it's paid off. And if that's the case and your house burns down, all of that equity is gone. All you have is the land. And these fires are happening, this current fire is happening in very wealthy areas. And so these are very expensive homes. Now, some of these people just they have enough money that, I wouldn't say they don't feel it, but it's probably much less of a big deal than it would be for you or I. But there will be cases where some of these people just watch their life savings go up in flames, literally. Now, when your homeowner's insurance is canceled and you still have a mortgage, you have to get coverage. And if you don't, the mortgage company will cover you, but they will charge you way more than an insurance company would. And so this has happened in Florida, for example, around there in many cases, where their insurer dropped them and then they couldn't find an alternative and suddenly their rates skyrocket. Or even if they do find an alternative, their rates skyrocket. Okay? So we could keep going through this, but you get the point. So let's zoom out. What's the general principle here? Well, actually, I want to quote this scripture here from Luke chapter 23. This is the Lord, and he's actually saying this during his march to the cross. He says, "For if they do these things in a green tree, what shall be done in the dry?" If there are all these women crying for him. And he says, "Weep not for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children." Because of what's coming. Now, this is my message to you. These are very wealthy people, and their lives are being ruined by this fire. But how was it started? I guess we're not totally sure yet, but imagine for a second. So there's actually an article here, a post, I guess, here by Amy Reichert, where she says, look, this is a problem because the governor's regressive policies have allowed homeless drug addicts and the mentally ill to go around setting these fires. No. Yes and no, okay? If the system is so fragile that one homeless person starting a fire can burn down tens of thousands of acres, or whatever it is at this point. Looks like 130,000 residents are under evacuation orders. 29,000 acres have been burned so far, and at least 2,000 buildings have been destroyed. 5 people have died so far. From one homeless person setting a fire, I guess I'm merging things here. The one in 2021 started because a homeless person set a fire. But if things like this can happen from such small, easy catalysts. How many homeless people are there in California? So what's the probability of one of them starting a fire on any given day? Even if it's not arson, just starting a fire to cook up some hot dogs or something. Who knows what, right? But add to that, they're not the only source of this. There are an ever-growing number of disgruntled people from all parts of the ideological map. If all it takes is a match to burn this down, it is way too fragile. Now, we could talk at length about California's lack of proper forest stewardship. We could talk about how they've been spending billions of dollars on solar panels while allowing electrical equipment to stay up from 100 years ago. We could talk about how the electric company hasn't pruned back the trees around the lines and all this other stuff. We could talk about all that. But here's the point. Here's why it's totally transferable to everything in your modern life. No matter if you live in California or not, no matter if you have a fancy house or not, no matter where you are, a tremendous proportion of your life is sitting on toothpicks. And you don't understand how easy it is to have one of those flicked out from under you. The time is far spent to start making your life a lot more robust to things that you can't control, to remove the complexity, or at least vastly reduce it from your life. Now, how do you do that? Then you get into particulars, okay? But what are some big principles? What are some things that you can do? Well, here's one, okay? Stress test your life. Sit down, not when you're stressed out. It's an anti-stress stress test. Sit down when you have a clear mind, you don't have a busy schedule, maybe you have a day off, whatever. Maybe it's early in the morning. And walk through your life thinking about what isn't robust, what is sensitive. Now that term stress test, there's a kind where you go to the doctor and they put you on a treadmill with all these electrodes to see how your heart's doing. Can your heart stand larger than normal challenges? But this kind of stress test, well, I should say that there's a banking application too, and maybe you've heard of this. And that's when banks go through computer simulations to see how well they could withstand unexpected conditions, right? You can do this with your life. And it turns out you probably don't even have to do this very extensively to find things that you could make better. But what it comes down to is we live our lives, most of us, almost everyone lives their life in this check-to-check mentality. And I don't just mean that in a financial sense, although it's certainly true if that's true. I'm saying in the more general sense, we only prepare for the challenges that we currently face, by and large. But as you'll read about in this book I wrote, Joy on Purpose, which provides a very practical, step-by-step way to make your life more robust, there's a quote in there about surplus. And it turns out that surprises require surplus. Those surprises could be good. It could be an opportunity. You know, a buddy could come up and say, hey, here's a wonderful business thing that I'm starting up, and you can get in this with me if you've got $5,000. And you say, well, I don't have $5,000. Or you might have this situation where you could vastly improve the relationship with one of your kids, but it takes a little time. And you might say, I don't have a little time. And we could go on and on. But opportunities for improvement, they require resources. It could be time, it could be money, it could be anything. But unwelcome surprises, challenges, they also require surplus resources. And so if you're living your life where you're just answering the question, what is needful based on what you can see right now, You're setting yourself up for failure. And it could be, you could have a fancy house in a fancy area like these people in California did, and you think you've won the game of life, but you're not paying attention to your homeowner's insurance. And then all of a sudden fire comes and you've got nothing. And you didn't realize, here you've worked like a maniac or gotten very lucky or a mix your whole life. You're living in one of the most wealthy places on earth, and some homeless dude sets a fire and ruins your life. You have no idea who he is. You didn't do anything to him. And yet now your life is ruined. You see? But I mean, imagine spending so much sense building a life like that, where you've won the game of life by your own metrics. And yet it's so fragile that one match burns it down. And like I said, you have no idea how many of you are in that boat. That same situation where your whole life could come grinding to a halt and fill you with terrible, this is how Jesus put it, that you'll be so depressed that you'll cry to the mountains, fall on us, and to the hills, cover us. Not just depressed, but in potentially real physical pain, but certainly emotional pain, right? And so you have to think about this. The good news is that the gospel is a system that prepares you for the worst possible things and then makes everything less than that even better, right? But if you just take it lightly and you just say, well, you take life lightly and you just say, well, we're doing all right. I mean, we're kind of the same place our neighbors are. Don't judge yourself by where everyone else is. Judge yourself by the best you could imagine things being. And if you're in a place where a literal or figurative match could burn down everything you have, you're in a very precarious situation. If you were walking a tightrope stretched out between two tall buildings, you wouldn't just be whistling and doing whatever the heck you wanted, acting like life is just great. You'd be very careful, and you'd be saying to yourself, I need to get the heck off of this wire, right? And you probably wouldn't want to be out there unless you're getting paid a lot of money to be there, right? So if you're rolling through life and you have these tremendous risks all around you, it's in your best interest to know what those are. And you probably can only see them a little bit. And this wraps into a whole bunch of other things about being honest with yourself about how things really are. But think about, like I said, do a stress test and think about the ways that you can make yourself more rigorous and make your life more rigorous. Because these challenges are all around us and they're going to get worse. And, I'll keep saying it, but this is going to happen. So maybe as a connected, related part of this, I said, often you don't see the challenges. Maybe before you saw this video, you didn't see how those fires might be a type of something that's going on in your life too. So if you find these things valuable, help me get them to more people by supporting this channel. This is what I'm doing full time, and I rely on donations to make that possible. So if you haven't already, please consider setting up a recurring monthly donation to help me keep making these videos. Well, I hope this has been helpful. We'll see you next time.